Let's take another look at boarding strategy in the early game with Mantis B. And this time, as promised, I'm going to be looking at how you can use the boarding drone. There was a very good reason that I did not want to look at boarding drone tactics in the previous video. You'll understand it when we go into all of the details and how it affects your strategy. It kind of needs to be considered on its own. There's a lot to go into. This particular fight, you can see that they have a burst laser 2 and a mini beam, so not the most dangerous weapons, but they can hurt you. The burst laser 2 can get through your shields. The mini beam will not actually do any damage until your shields are completely down, because it's timing out with the burst laser. But this is actually a real fight. This happened to a high-level player who was doing a win streak. And, you know, he has thousands of hours in the game. He came across this fight in, I think, Sector 2. He boarded them. He did send over the boarding drone. He didn't have a clear plan about how he was going to win the fight. They hit him in the teleporter. He couldn't win the crew fight, and he lost the run and lost the streak. So the point of my using this as an example is twofold. Number one, this isn't theoretical. Even highly skilled and experienced players can get into trouble with boarding strategy. It's kind of its own thing. You really need a deep understanding of it to manage these situations properly. And the other reason is that this is actually a great example for starting to look at boarding drone tactics and strategy. And for me as well, right? Like, I am still learning this stuff, and this was a good springboard for me to look into stuff that I'd wanted to look into properly for quite a long time and hadn't got around to. So with that said, let's take a look at it. Oh, the other thing about this is that they only have 3 crew. And I can know that because you see what type of ship it is, and this ship will have only 3 crew until you get into, what is it, Sector 5. So we know they have 2 Mantis and an NG, and one of the Mantis is going to board us. We will be able to kill that Mantis, and that reduces them to 2 crew, which opens up more tactics. It makes this a lot more reasonable to attempt. And as a reminder, yes, we're looking at ways that you can win the fight here. We are looking for ways you can win the fight in complete safety, right? In the sense that you might take some hull damage, but you're not going to lose your crew. If you are at all uncertain about how you're going to win the fight, then don't even board, just run away. Like we talked about earlier, it'd be good to upgrade your engines, like we talked about earlier, in the previous video. But let's have a go. I'm going to turn off the boarding drone. Where's the border? Looks like they're going into Medbay. Yeah, so we're going to go kill them in the Medbay. The boarding drone is heading into weapons, and that actually means that I will be able to win this fight. And in fact, I'm going to send it now before it can get shut down. I want it to land. Okay. And of course I should be doing the fire safety stuff in this corner, but I want to keep the video moving along. Let's finish healing. Okay. The boarding drone went into the weapons room, which is an equal priority to defend as the medbay. And what that means is that when we board into the weapons, they're going to see 3 crew, and they actually won't react to us moving out into medbay. If we moved into shield, which is a higher priority system, then they would follow us. But this is a very useful pattern to be able to know in general with boarding tactics, is how to use the enemy defense priorities. So we can sit here and break the medbay. We have to be a little bit careful. We might actually want to turn our boarding drone off in case this NG gets too low. And this is going to be a level 2 medbay because I programmed it to be. Because the reason we're worrying about the NG's health here is that the room is going to drain of oxygen soon. Notice as well that we don't require the boarding drone to be online in order for this tactic to work. And now the fastest thing we can do to kill them is actually go in here. Just real quick, and then in here. The point about that strategically is that once you knew it was going to the weapons room, as long as you got it in the weapons room and then you were able to board reasonably shortly afterwards, you would always be able to punch down a level 2 medbay. And we know it can't be a level 3 medbay because, you know, we're not in sector 3 yet. And yeah, they take out our teleporter, but we get to go back anyway. This time the boarding drone is heading for the teleporter. It might not look like it, but it is. There you go. And we can also win this one. Let's turn it off. Where's their border? In the doors. Go kill them. Now, of course, doing this, there is potentially some risk because I have stopped my FTL charging, and you know, if they hit me in the teleporter, it will take me time to repair it and so on. But the risk is quite small. Like, the risk of running away also exists. I suppose I should swap these out so they take damage equally. Oh, that's kind of annoying. Doesn't matter. We go heal. Actually, that's probably plenty of healing. And now what we're going to do is board into the teleporter. And now when the boarding drone arrives, it can't go to those squares because they're already occupied. It will cause a breach in the teleporter, but it gets kicked out into the next room, which is weapons. And then we just do the same thing. We go into weapons. We go into medbay. We have exactly the same situation. This time the boarding drone is going into piloting, and I happen to know that we can force it out of piloting into shields. It doesn't go into this room. This could be doors, by the way, if they had the optional system, but it won't go into doors. It'll go into shields. I'll show you how I know that a little bit later. Oh, I should have been swapping my guys, but it's fine. Probably. So we board into piloting. Send the drone. Now we need to put one crew in shields, briefly, and then leave into medbay. So at this point they see 2 crew in shields, which is the highest priority room to defend, and then we can leave and they'll still act as if there are 2 crew in shields. They won't reassign because you're not going to a higher priority system for defense. And again, we can turn off the boarding drone if we like. It doesn't actually need to be on. But if we have it online, it's a bit better to whittle down their health faster. You need to make sure that their health doesn't get down to 25% or, well, below 25%, or they'll run to the medbay. But that, let's just make sure. I think they're about to destroy it anyway, yeah. This time it's going into shields, and of course that is just a simpler version of the piloting one because we don't need to force it out into shields, it's just going there directly. So again, we wait for them to board, we kill their border. It is important to keep the boarding drone healthy. Oops. So that our Mantis have time to break the medbay. That is a little bit annoying, but we don't actually need the help on the Mantis. Okay, boarding bot is offline. That is alright. But you can see why the boarding bot's health does actually matter. Something else you have to be a little bit careful with, by the way, if your boarder's health does get very low and your teleporter is down, is the timing at which you kill their crew, because as soon as you kill their last crew, you're going to be ported back into piloting instantly, and one of their incoming shots could hit you. So try to bear that in mind. That's a really tricky one to remember. This one is heading into Medbay, and we can win this by using the breach that it creates. It's important to recognize that you actually do need the breach here, because they can take your boarding bot offline and then it won't be able to punch down the medbay, right? Even with your crew distracting in shields. So I'm actually just going to let this land right away, because I want to get the breach draining their oxygen sooner. Okay, it's empty of O2. Doesn't really matter if they destroy the drone, as long as they don't fix the breach. And now we can just board and win. So the thing to understand here is that when a room is empty of air, actually it doesn't have to be fully empty, it just has to be down to 10%, then enemy crew will not go into it. They might path through it to do something else, but they won't enter the room itself deliberately, so to speak. And so they don't run to the medbay. This one is going into engines, and that is a problematic system compared to the others, as is oxygen. And the reason for that is that, you know, we can't use the breach in a medbay, and we can't force it out into a system that is equal or higher priority than the medbay. It is still possible to do this, but it can be a bit slow, and you might take a lot of damage depending on their weapons. But I'll show you one way that you can do it. We let it land. Of course, one way you can do it is to let them kill the boarding bot and then send another one into a system that's more straightforward, and that might be a good play, especially if you're worried about them doing a lot of damage with their weapons. Maybe you should be running away instead. That kind of thing, or at least, you know, maintain the potential to run away. So it's not completely clear cut, it would depend on the situation. Anyway, let's just look at an example of how you can do this. I'm going to board into the empty room because that is a lower priority. You could actually board straight into shields, but I'm going to pull one crew instead. Oh, that Mantis has actually gone to heal already. I'll just go into shields. And now the NG is going to run. The Mantis is coming back, unfortunately, so I didn't time that very well. But we can still just send it to the medbay again. Now we've damaged shields. I can go into another room. Actually, wait, was that the NG? Yeah, okay. I need to make them rotate again. It's better if they're the other way around. Alright. Now we can kill the NG. And the point here is that because we damage shields, we're going to be able to 2v1 this crew. The Mantis isn't going to follow us into the medbay because repairing shields is a higher priority task than defending a system. And at this point, especially with our crew a little bit low on health, we might want to break one level of the medbay. Sometimes killing a crew in a level 2 medbay can take a little bit longer depending on the combat roles. So let's just remove that issue. And then we just kill this Mantis. But you can see, you may potentially take a fair amount of damage doing this, especially if your shields go all the way down. And what you might realize looking at that is that in this fight we actually don't need the boarding drone at all. So we can just do the same thing without using a boarding drone. If I could just swap my crew, please. Oh yeah, console is over there. So we do actually have enough health to repeatedly send them to the medbay. So okay, maybe I should have showed you that at the start, but the other tactics are going to be relevant to know in other situations. Not to mention that this tactic is slower. So you think about how many times they fired their weapons. I think you're looking at what? For this kind of tactic, you're looking at about 6 volleys versus about 3. So, you know, they're firing twice as many times. So it's much more effective if you can end the fight quickly using a boarding drone. You know, when it goes into shields, or when it goes into weapons, or when you can force it into those systems, or even when it breaches medbay. Before we continue, I should probably show you how I know where the boarding drone overflow room is going to be. It turns out there isn't any kind of pattern whatsoever. So it's not like you can go, oh, if they go in the medbay, well, the north door has precedence, or weapons has precedence because it's a more important room or something. No, there's no pattern at all. It's actually based on the internal numbering of the individual doors on the ship. And that is arbitrary, right? That depends on how they built the ship. But I have added this boarding overflow button to my enemy ship's website here. And you can just click that, and you get a teleporter icon, and then just click in a room, and it will show you the overflow. The Zoltan is in the room where it overflows. This should be accurate. I did double check it as best I could. Of course, it's a lot of ships to go through. I just manually boarded into them. So if anyone spots any mistakes, do let me know. But as far as I've seen, this is accurate. And if you want to get out of this mode, then you just click stop boarding and you're back to normal. So now we have some concepts about how to use the boarding drone. Let's see how they work with a different enemy. This one is a bit trickier because they don't have a teleporter. They could do. This ship layout can have a teleporter. This one doesn't. And that means they have 3 human crew. That's a bit trickier. Also, in some ways, the layout is worse here. Anyway, this one is going for shields. And the issue here is that previously we had a Mantis and an NG hitting our boarding drone, and that's 2 humans worth of combat damage. This is 3 humans worth of damage. So you see it's quite close. They were already leaving the room by the time we broke the medbay. Weapons, of course, has the same issue as shields, but it's actually worse. Quite a bit worse, because it's right next to medbay. We can't use our speed to our advantage as much. And that means they're a lot more likely to get into the medbay before we break it. It's actually quite unlikely that we will break this in time. This one is going for medbay, and this gets pretty interesting. We're gonna have to use the breach again, but we're not going to be able to pull all of the crew. Right? There's going to be one in there that goes to fight them. It turns out that's actually okay. So we just wait for this to drain of air. It's probably there already, but let's wait for the stripes. Okay. And now this one is in the medbay, but these two are not going to run to it. So we use the time that this one is taking to kill the boarding bot to kill these two. And of course they're not going to run to the medbay, and we just win. So it turns out that the only way this fight becomes completely safe to board is if the bot lands in medbay. We've seen how to handle that using the breach. If it lands in weapons or engines and you force it out into weapons, then you're unlikely to break a level 2 medbay. It is possible, by the way, if you don't break the medbay, that you might be able to focus down one of their crew. You could go into shields. If you can kill one of the crew, you can probably damage 1 bar of shields, and you can focus down one while the other repairs shields. So it is possible. I've done it, but you can also get in trouble because it will depend on the health that they have, at what time, and how they cycle through. So you might just find yourself trapped. So I wouldn't recommend that as a consistent tactic. Shields is very consistent. I actually tested it 100 times, thanks to Xenix's testing tool, which has a quick load feature. And every single time I managed to break the medbay, but sometimes we're very close, and one time the door was actually opening as we broke the medbay. So I don't think it's 100% safe here if the boarding bot lands in shields. And that's with Mantis pheromones, by the way. Oxygen and piloting, useless. You can force it out of those rooms, but it goes into the empty room. So, in summary, medbay is completely safe if it lands there. Shields is pretty safe, but not 100%. And I know this is just one specific ship, but, you know, maybe knowing that that's 3 humans, and the distance involved, it might give you a read on other ships potentially if you know their crew, right? Let's take a look at the same ship with a clone bay, and this time I'm going to show you how to do it without the boarding drone first. I think that will be a useful starting point, but I don't recommend this. I really can't recommend this. The point about this is that you need to get them all very low on health and then destroy the clone bay. So we can do this by just trying to distribute damage. We could do something like this, and maybe then go to piloting. But it's difficult to distribute the damage properly. And one way you can do it is by letting them 2v1 you sometimes, right? So for example, these two are low, but the other one I think isn't low enough. Let's go find them. What are they at? Yeah, you see this crew is at Willow is at 59 health. That's way too high. So we now have a bit of a problem. You know, could I have managed that better? Maybe. But you see how tricky this is. So if we can get Willow to come into a room with us, and we may not be able to do that. Okay, we have. Then what we can do to make this stable is not kill the other one, right? So we can go back and forth. Oops. And we're actually letting them get hits on our Mantis. Okay, and now we can go into clonebay and just kill them all really quickly. Of course, if it's a level 1 clonebay, we would have won, but you have to plan around level 2. As soon as one of them pops out, you go into shields. And I suppose I should attend my ship a bit. And you start dancing. Okay. And believe it or not, we've now won. Technically, I mean, assuming our ship survives. Because now I can do this. Okay. So you can definitely do this, but you see how low our crew got. You know, that we're even under the threshold where this random laser shot could actually kill us. Right? So now we have to do this. It's a bit dicey, and I can't really recommend it. It's just too easy to get into a situation where, you know, you try to be clever, you try to rotate around and get the right fights so that you got their health equally low. But if you don't manage to do that for whatever reason, it is very fiddly against 3 crew. You could just lose. It's important to realize, by the way, that you do not have a lot of margin with that tactic, in the sense that you do have to get them all very low on health. They are very close to spawning a second crew from the clone bay. So if you leave one of them a little bit healthy, then it's pretty likely they'll actually get a second crew, respawn, and then you're doomed. Now the good news is that you can use the boarding drone very effectively on this fight to help you and make this same tactic, just make it stable. At least in the vast majority of situations. So let's take a look at that. Whatever room it lands in, we should be able to make use of it. And of course, by doing this, we are chipping away at their health. They have a clone bay, not a medbay, so they can't heal until we kill them. While staying on our ship, so we're hedging our bets. We still have the option of running away. We're charging our FTL. So all we do here is let the bot and the breach hurt them. In this case, that looks like level 1 oxygen. So I think what's going to happen here is that they won't fix that breach. They'll run from an airless room at 20 health. There's one of them running. And another one came in, I think. Oh, no, what's going on? I think it is worth taking a peek. Okay, 20, 20, 17. So this is pretty good. We can just board and win now. Okay. Funny enough, the most awkward one is actually clonebay. So let's take a look at this. Level 1? Yeah, level 102. So they're not going to be able to fix the breach, just like before. Which has an interesting consequence, because we need to destroy the clonebay if we're going to win the fight. Oh, I suppose I better repair my teleporter if I'm going to attempt this. Let's check on the situation. I do think it's worth the effort. Right, so same thing happened. Again, we've got 2 on, in this case, 20. It wouldn't always be that exact, but, you know, that's when they run. And 1 who's lower. And we can do something very aggressive here. We just board clonebay. When is it? I think it's about, what, 23 health? Okay, so I'm going to pause quite carefully here. Okay, as soon as you break it, you need to get out of the room. Because you're venting your mantis. And we can win these fights. Because we're Mantis, and they're not. And of course, as soon as we kill the first 2, we have that 2v1 advantage, so if we need to, we can do the shields dancing. But we actually don't need to. Now, that one might look really bad, right? It might look similar to the opening where I told you this is really dicey. There is a difference. And the difference is that the amount of health that your mantis loses in the clonebay while it's vented is 100% predictable. It will always be the same. And you know that they're always going to have 20 health or less each. So, I mean the enemies are. So it's actually completely within your control, even though it seems very dicey. The one thing you'd have to watch out for, though, is enemy weapons, right? So you might want to keep that last 1 crew of theirs alive while you do the dancing stuff in shields, in order to make sure you don't get hit by a laser when you come back into piloting. That would be very sad. This one is going into shields. And again, we should be able to use this. Let's just see what happens. An important point here is that even if you don't get... oh, careful. A neat example. That might be bad. I think I overdid it. Is that crew dead? Oh no, they leave before the suffocation starts. Clever. Yeah, they leave at 10%. Even if you don't get, you know, a perfect split of crew health, you are softening them up. That's a bit sloppy of me. Right. So this might seem similar to the previous situation at the start where I said it was very dicey, but they just have a lot less health. And the other thing is that we can control the split better, right? Because we've already got one of them very low on health. So I know that if I board into piloting, the crew that it's going to pull is going to be the weapons crew, right? Because they're a lower priority task, manning task, than the engines crew. So we just board into piloting. We get some 2v1. And it's not going to be exactly equal, but it's pretty close. And given that we've softened up their crew already with the boarding drone, we effectively have more health to play with ourselves, so we can use those tactics where we let them hit our crew, right? Okay, you can't do 13 in one hit, right? You don't have training or anything. So this is going well. Notice we got the 2v1 time on the pilot, and now, you know, if I really want to optimize it, I can do this kind of stuff. Okay, now they're all very low, we go into clonebay and we win. If you get this absolutely perfect, then they actually won't clone at all. So that might happen here, but it needs to be spot on, and I think you might even need good timing with the timing of the hits. Okay, yeah, it didn't work. It does happen sometimes, not very often. Let's go in here so we control who's getting hit. We are above 15 health. Okay. Here's one that went into oxygen, and you can see that they didn't get quite as low. There's one that's low, and the other two are actually above 20. But that's pretty easy to solve, right? We just board into engines. We can hit them a bit. Do this. Okay, they're within one hit. Now we break clonebay. Okay, so there's an interesting one where we got the boarding bot into clonebay, but they did manage to fix the breach. I think that was because I turned it off when the first shots came in to simulate it being taken offline. So it wasn't able to do as much damage to them, they didn't run out of the room as quickly. And now we end up with this situation where two of them are very low and one is not so low. But that's solvable as well. The one in weapons is the one that's not low. Or not low enough. Let's just board into... Well, actually, clonebay is fine. The weapons crew comes first. Oh, and because the oxygen is actually still low, they're running out. That's funny. But you know, we can tweak it like this. Oh, you know, I wasn't doing the fire safety stuff. May be punished. Oh yeah. I guess I have to leave the doors open. I will get out of this because I have pheromones. See, no problem. Same thing with doors. Easy going. So what we've seen with this ship is that the clonebay actually makes it a lot easier than medbay, and no matter what system the boarding drone lands in, you should be able to use it to soften up their crew, and then you should be in a position where you can board and control their crew health without losing too much of your own, so that it is stable. Obviously, be careful. I would recommend checking sensors before you move in with your crew anyway, just to make sure that the situation is what you think it is. I'd even recommend repairing sensors if it gets destroyed so that you can do that check. But this one is pretty benign. So now we've seen that there are some tactics and ideas that you can use with the boarding drone to allow you to win some fights safely that otherwise would have been very dangerous to board. But we need to keep it in perspective, right? We saw with the Rebel fighter that had a medbay, it's actually not safe most of the time, right? The only one that was completely safe was medbay in that case. And then you're going to run into fights like this. Right, this is a pirate ship. You have to really watch out for pirate ships because you don't know what their crew are. And this fight, oh look, they have an offensive drone. We're not safe. This is super dangerous. What are you going to do here? They have 3 Mantis. They don't even have a big shields room or a big weapons room. So you can't even pull all 3 of them in there so that you can go break the medbay. Also, the medbay's right next to those rooms. We saw that issue before on the Rebel fighter, and of course these are Mantis, so they're fast. What do you do here? You just run, right? You just run away. Upgrade your engines. Run away from these bad fights. The examples that I've shown you are what I'm going to be using as the basis for, I suppose, and analysing other fights as well. So, you know, for example, if you get like the same fight and instead of having 3 humans, it's 2 humans and an NG. Well, okay, you know that's better in terms of combat damage. So you can use them as reference points, but you have to consider every fight on its own merits, and there's just no way here, not with a medbay. I mean, I guess what we could potentially do is the one thing we could do, right, is see if it lands in medbay. Almost. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I mean, it's a 1 in 7. And I guess it is worth doing that because this fight is so dangerous. Oops. Fire safety is a thing. This fight is so dangerous, you might even want to spend multiple boarding drones if you're not getting away. But anyway, you get the idea. Just because I've shown you some of these tactics, don't just think you can board every fight and win using the boarding drone. It's quite specific. You need to assess the individual fight. And there's going to be a range of fights where you can say, okay, this one is easy. I know that this is going to be fine because I've seen it before. I've seen something that is easier. And then there's going to be ones like this that are very obviously dangerous. And there's going to be stuff in the middle. And my recommendation would be in a real game that you actually want to win, unless you're experimenting. Even the stuff that's in the middle where you think, well, you know, maybe it's not that much more difficult. I'd probably just run away, right? But also this stuff is very new. At least it's new to me. So there's probably more to discover.